Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm pretty excited about this video tonight because these are all whiskeys that I have thoroughly enjoyed in the past and are a little bit harder to come by. So to have these five sitting in front of me right now is a pretty special moment. Now I do have to thank Matt Warren, one of our Patreon supporters, for supplying most of what's on the table tonight. So we are covering Booker's, Baker's, and Little Book. So these are some of the more limited release bottles that you get from Beam Suntory, you know, the Jim Beam distillery, those folks. And the funny thing about them, it's a family business. So one of the things I love about their releases is that you've got, for example, Baker's. Baker was the great nephew of Jim Beam. We've got Booker's on the table tonight. Three of these are different iterations of the Booker's series. Booker is the father of the current master distiller at Jim Beam. And then we also have Little Book, who is the that guy's grandson, the son of the current master distiller. So it's a family business. It always has been. And that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. And they seem to have so much fun with each other and have great chemistry and lots of sort of playful iterations on things that they do. So we tip our hat to them and looking forward to diving into these. But each of these sort of has their own unique flavor profiles. Each of them is supposed to be this person's namesake, right? They want to do something that is within the family business. It's right in line with Jim Beam and that whole legacy, but they also want to put something out there that's sort of uniquely them, and that's what I love about these releases. Some of them are harder to find than others. Baker's, for example, I love Baker's. It's easy for me to get a bottle of this because I have a local liquor store that loves to stock it, but it's not necessarily easy for everybody, I'm told. And then obviously you've got Little Book is on the table tonight. That's something that doesn't get released very often. So I would recommend, if you're interested in picking any of these things up, it's always good to look up a limited release calendar for some of these distilleries and see when they are releasing some of these things. And that way you can plan ahead, save ahead, because some of these can be, $100, $150. Some of them are lower. Baker's will retail for anywhere around like $70. It depends on where you're getting it, really, and who you're buying it from. So that way you can plan ahead. But I do want to talk about what sets these things apart. Like I said, it's somebody trying to sort of stamp their name on something and make it unique. So let's start with Baker's. So Baker's, the whole idea here is that we are going for a single barrel release. It's always going to be 107 proof. It's always got an age statement of at least 7 years. The barrel that my bottle here comes from, it has the age statement on the neck. It is 8 years old and 1 month. So it is over that 7-year age statement. And the whole idea here is that they are going through the rickhouse and they're going to find a barrel that speaks to them for this line. And it has a unique character to it, but is also sort of in line with what they expect from the Baker's line. And this is going to be a single barrel where none of the others are on the table. Well, I will say this, Booker's has done, as far as I know, at least one single barrel release, but usually it's a batch release. So it's a batch that goes into several different barrels that they are really proud of, that they use for the Booker's lineup. So Baker's is the only single barrel on the table tonight. Now I will say that Baker's did recently rebrand as well. So in terms of just the way they present the bottle. So if you have an older bottle of Baker's and you're like, hey, that doesn't look like mine, that would be why. So this is the new bottling for Baker's. I think it's actually really clean. It's a good look. But then Booker's in Little Book, they still follow that old traditional bottling style. They almost look like wine bottles to a certain degree, or like a mead sort of a bottle, which is kind of cool. So if you've got one of those bottles, most people tend to keep the bottles after they drain them just because they look cool and they're kind of good collectibles. But now let's talk about Booker's. So 3 of these, by the way, if I didn't say this before, I'm doing a blind. So I know what's on the table, I just don't know which one is which. So I'm going to blind them all, and we'll see which ones I like the best at the end of it. But anyways, Booker's is this is a batch release, and they release a few batches a year. And their whole idea with these batches is that they do keep an eye on these batches as they're maturing and they're tasting them. And the whole thing is that they're ready when they're ready. So they could be 6 years, it could be 8-year-old whiskey, and it will usually, it'll tell you. But their whole thing is they're just like, well, we release them when they're ready to be released. We let Mother Nature do its thing once those batches are in the barrel. And once we feel like they've reached that maturation, that's when we release it. So it could be 6 years, could be 7, could be 8, anywhere in between there. And they do pride themselves on keeping those barrels in sort of the sweet spots in the warehouse. They get the best like ratios of humidity and heat and all that stuff. So they sort of plan ahead with those batches too when they're putting them in the barrels and putting them in the rick house. They sort of save space for them. And I do totally intend to do a video on warehouse influence. I want to do a series of videos where I talk about flavor creation during every stage of the whiskey creating process. And warehouse influence is definitely going to be its own episode of that series for sure. And lastly, one of these is a little book. So specifically, it's a Little Book of Secrets, Chapter 5. Because Little Book, this is something that's not going to be the same twice. So Little Book is sort of like I said, it's the son of the current master distiller, Freddie. And what he's doing is, instead of just staying right there in the Jim Beam rick houses, he has access to all of Beam Suntory products, any of the barrels. And he's sampling them to find a blend of barrels that he can sort of create these unique flavor profiles that really speak to him that year for that release. And so Little Book tends to have a much different flavor profile than anything else that's going to be on the table tonight. So specifically, I know that that Little Book of Secrets Chapter 5 is a blend of like a 2-year Kentucky straight bourbon. There's a 15-year Kentucky straight bourbon, but then there's also like I don't know, it's like somewhere between 4 and 6 years. There's a straight malt rye whiskey as well. So it should have some pretty unique flavor profiles on that one as well. But that being said, I want to dive into these, and underneath the coasters are the names of the whiskeys that's in the glass. So I haven't seen those, I don't know those, and I'll reveal them at the end after I pick which ones are my favorites. So I'll probably like try to slide them forward, back, and rank them that way. So I think what I'll do is I'll take these off the coasters because I'm afraid that as I slide them around, the labels are going to come out from underneath, and then I'll see. But I want to be able to slide them forward and back freely without worrying. So what I'll do is I'll start on my right, which is your left, and we'll go through these and taste them one at a time. Oh man, the nose on that is terrific. But the thing is, it definitely smells like a Jim Beam product. I mean, you get I get smacked in the face with that roasted peanut, like a toffee roasted peanut, stewed corn. It's sweet with a little heat, but the heat is not like a rye or a peppery sweetness. It's more like an ABV heat, alcohol heat. But man, that is delightful on the nose. I mean, I get so much peanut on that. Let's taste it. Oh my goodness. I mean, you definitely get hit with a little bit of that alcohol heat for sure. But it's not like a tannic oak, but you get, especially on the tail end, on the finish of that, lots of oak influence. That's delicious. It does have a bit of a kick to it if you're used to some of the more mainstream Jim Beam products for sure. So this has been kicked up a notch. Obviously, if it's Baker's, it's going to be 107 because they always proof it to 107. If it's one of the Booker's, it will be at barrel proof, but it's like it's a batch, so it's a blend of different barrels from that batch. So the ABV could be different, but it should be pretty high. Yeah, because Little Book should be in the 116 ABV range. So actually, I think this one would be the lowest on the heat department. But anyways, this is just fantastic. I mean, that's like a quintessential Jim Beam bourbon that's had extra time to mature, got rid of the tannic young oak influence, more like that long-term roasty, charry oak influence, but lots of vanilla, because the vanillins, the longer time it takes in that barrel, the more vanillins it's extracting from the wood. I could drink that all night. All right, let's go on to number 2 here. But that came out the gate strong. The nose on this one is immediately pretty different. I don't get smacked in the face with that peanut influence. I mean, it might be in there on the palate, but not so much on the nose. It's got a sweet but crisp sort of a vibe to it. Some vanilla. A little butterscotch maybe on the nose. Let's try it. Huh. That's a much drier whiskey than the first one. The sweetness is dialed back. It's a little more subtle. Not a lot of those roasty qualities to it. One thing I'm noticing is just how much it sticks to the glass afterwards. You know, if it's a Booker's, you know, that's one of the things that they're known for, is it's uncut, unfiltered, straight into the bottle. And so it does tend to be much more viscous. But this doesn't have a lot of those, like, toffee, you know, roasted peanut vibes like the first one had. It's a much more subtle sweetness. The sweetness is dialed back, but it's mellowed out quite a bit. The whole thing. And the finish is just a subtly sweet oak. Quite good, though. This one, like, punches you in the face with all those quintessential bourbon flavors. This one mellows them out quite a bit. It's a much more patient journey through those flavors. But I'm left with a bit of a dryness, too. Let's move on to the third. I'm like looking at the viscosity, you know. Is it sticking to the sides like the last one did? A little bit, but not too much. The nose on this one, I get hit right up front with just like a sweet vanilla. Where this was toffee roasted peanuts, this was a more subtly spiced, you know, sweetness to it. This one is just all vanilla, a little bit of butterscotch. You get the heat of the alcohol as well. Not necessarily a spice. Let me go back to this one. This one almost reminds me of like tobacco. But the third one, oh, that's much different. The vanilla comes through quite nicely, but then I also get like some like melon maybe apricot. A little bit of a fruity note in that one that the others didn't have. There's more of a malty sort of a vibe to it as well. Almost like there's some barley influence in there. More than just like your base level that's used for the enzymatic power, but above and beyond, like you're going for some barley flavor influence. And I think I get a little bit more of a rye influence on this one too. Like the rye and the mash bills coming through a lot more strongly. Not more so than these. It's not strong. It's not like that's a rye whiskey. None of these are ryes. Well, I mean, Little Book has a rye in it, but it's a blend with several other bourbons. So it wouldn't be the star of the show. And this one definitely isn't. But it feels like there's a little bit of a rye influence in there that's coming more toward the forefront than the others did. If I had to stop right now and rank them, I think I would go 1. Number 1 would be 1. Number 3 would be 2. And number 2 would be 3rd. And that's just right now. I mean, I'll revisit these as we continue the blind. But as of right now, I think that's where I would rank them. So I'm just going to use that as a baseline moving forward. Let's go to the next one. Right off the bat, I feel like the color on this one is much more caramely, darker, more amber. Ooh. The nose on that is caramel. I mean, it's like your salted caramel candies. Definitely vanilla. Maybe even like those circus peanut candies. I also get maybe like a tobacco influence as well. Not as nutty as the first, but definitely has that caramel sweetness to it. Yeah, there's the peanut on the palate though, which is very typical of a Jim Beam product for sure. And oh my goodness, it is coating that glass. It's very viscous. Feels like the heat of the alcohol comes through a little bit more strongly on the finish. But I wish it would. I wish it would kind of go away and let me hang on to that roasted peanut flavor, because that's delicious. It's good. This is good, but it's not as diverse, I think, as the others. Like the others had more things going on that I could pick out. This one is maybe a little. I hate to say one note because that seems like an insult, but that one note could be a really good note. You know what I mean? So if that's your vibe, that's your vibe. But I do really like a toffee roasted peanut sort of a flavor that you get on some bourbons. And that doesn't come through super hot on the nose, but it definitely comes through strong on the palate. But then you just get the heat of the alcohol in the finish. And I wish it had more of like an oak influence on the finish that I'm not getting on this one. A little bit of a dusty corn, stewed corn kind of a vibe going on as well. Like I said, it's good, but it's not as diverse as the others. But it leaves me wishing for more, wanting more. So I think for now I'm going to put it in 4th place. Let's move on to the last one. Similar in color to this one. A lot of amber, caramel colors. Oh man. Oh, that nose is delightful. And it is definitely very viscous just on visual inspection as it coats the glass. I don't get hit with like that, the heat of the alcohol, right? The high ABV. I mean, all these are high ABV tonight. They're all high proof. But I don't get smacked in the face with it. I get caramel, but even like a little bit of a bright fruit, like a lemon citrusy sort of a vibe, like the rind of a lemon peel. But that's not necessarily the forefront. It's in there. I get more of just like a stewed corn, caramel, dusty corn, butterscotch. Very delightful nose. I could smell that all day. I need a candle that smells like that. I need some body wash that smells like that. My wife might not appreciate it, but I sure will. I sit down here in my office in my own funk all day. If I smelled like this, it would be much more bearable. I'm going to taste this. I'm excited to taste this just on the nose alone. Lordy. The heat of the alcohol comes through on the palate in a way it doesn't on the nose. The nose was much more subtle. On the palate, it comes through pretty strong, but it's not overpowering either. I definitely get a lot of those quintessential Jim Beam bourbon vibes. That roasted peanut, a little bit of a leathery tobacco vibe, sweet caramel candies. And the finish is a subtle oak, but it's a sweet oak. Like it's been mellowed, you know. A little bit more of a dry finish, though. But that's a delightful drink. Now is the hard part where I got to rank these. I'm going to revisit one. That is spectacular. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say number 1 is my number 1. Number 3 is my number 2. Number 5 is my number 3. 2 is 4. 4 is 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, based on what I know about Booker's, Baker's, and Little Book, I'm going to make some predictions. We'll see if I'm right. There are 3 Bookers on the table, 1 Baker's, 1 Little Book. I think that number 1 is a Booker's. I think that number 5 is a Booker's. I think that number 2 is a Booker's. I think number 3 is Little Book. And I think that number 4 is my Baker's, which is good, but it was a little one note. We'll see if I'm right about that. So again, I thought this is a Booker's, this is a Booker's, this is Little Book, this is Baker's, this is Booker's. That's my prediction. First place, second place, third place, fourth place, fifth place. All right, shall we see what they are? This is the fun part. I get to see if I was right. So I said this was a Booker's. It is a Booker's. This is Booker's 2022, so last year, batch number 2. Awesome. So that is my number 1 was the 2022 batch 2 of Booker's. My second place is now I said this was, I guessed that this was Little Book. It is it is Little Book. It's Little Book, Little Book of Secrets, Chapter 5. Now, before I go pat myself on the back about that one, let me be clear. If you drink enough whiskey, I don't think that's a hard one to pick out. Because I know that there was one of the whiskeys that's in this blend was a malted rye. Now, I know from the way that I described this one, the notes I was getting out, I was getting those malty vibes, I was getting that rye influence as well. And so that wasn't necessarily a hard pick. But I really liked those flavors. So, good job, Freddie. All right, my number 3. I said this was a Booker's. So far, I'm 2 for 2. I said this was a Booker's. It is. It is Booker's 2022 batch 3. That was my third place. That was quite tasty. The nose on this one, I think the nose was the best of the batch. I think the nose on Booker's, my third place, was the best nose of the batch. But the palate on this one and the diversity of the flavors in this one kind of edged it out for me. All right, my fourth place. I said this was also a Booker's. If I got this one right, it means I'm 5 for 5. So again, My first place was Booker's 2022 Batch 2. My second place was Little Book of Secrets Chapter 5. My third place was Booker's 2022 Batch 3. My fourth place, I said, was a Booker's. And this is the moment of truth. See if I'm 5 for 5. I was wrong. Okay, I was 3 for 5. I got 3 in a row. To be fair, I got 3 in a row. But yes, this is the Bakers. I said this was one of the Bookers. This is the Bakers. And that took my fourth place, which means this is, Booker's 2021 Batch 3. Took my last place. Now, like I said, none of these are bad. They're all good. But I just liked some of them more than the others. So there you have it. Bakers. I do really like this bottle. I plan to replenish it when it's done. I think Bakers is really good. And this was Booker's 2021 3. Yeah, I think I stand by my ranking. I think Bakers just barely edges that one out. But there you have it. Hey, Jim Beam Suntory. Y'all make some good whiskey. Don't sleep on them. If you love that roasted peanut and some tobacco, leathery, and oak vibes, hey, try this stuff out. I promise you, you won't regret it. I definitely plan this year on trying to get my hands on some of the releases of the various batches of Bookers. And when I do, if and when I do, I'll be sure to give you an updated review. But let it be known that Booker's 2022 Batch 2, if you see it anywhere on the shelf or online somewhere for a decent price, pick it up. It took my #1 spot tonight. That was a delicious whiskey. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to my patrons as well. Matt Warren, appreciate you for sending me this stuff. You really blew me away with your generosity and just how much time and effort you put into sending these to me and keeping them anonymous. I've had my wife go through the envelope that you sent that listed out what these vials are, what was in them. So I'm excited to dive into the rest of them. He sent me more, by the way. There's more stuff. So thank you so much, Matt. But anyways, hey, cheers. May you live richly and get better with age. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like the video, subscribe for more content, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.